The Quest 2 is far and away the most popular VR headset on the market today. And if you're watching this, you probably already own one or have at least used one, and you're wondering whether Meta's newest offering, the Quest 3, is worth upgrading to. First things first, both the Quest 2 and the Quest 3 are standalone VR headsets, meaning you can enjoy virtual and mixed reality experiences on both without needing to connect them to an expensive gaming PC. Although you can connect them to a gaming PC and play PC VR games on them if you'd like to, but we'll talk more about that later on. Other VR headsets, like the Valve Index for example, cost more than even the Quest 3 does and require a gaming PC in order to use them. So the standalone nature and the affordable pricing of the Quest headsets is what has made them so popular. At $499 US for the 128GB model and $649 for the 512GB model, the Quest 3 costs about twice as much as a Quest 2. So just what exactly are we getting for double the money? Well, let's start by looking at what all comes in the box with each headset. You of course get the headset itself, a pair of controllers, and a USB-C charging cable and wall adapter. The Quest 2 also comes with a glasses spacer and a rubber cover for the facial interface if you choose to use it. There is no glasses spacer for the Quest 3 because the facial interface itself is adjustable. I like this because now I don't have to worry about the glasses spacer getting lost or stepped on and broken. The facial interface on the Quest 2 is made from a foam material, which I actually find to be fairly comfortable, but it also does a good job of soaking up your sweat, which is kinda gross when you're sharing your headset with friends. Not to mention, when the Quest 2 first came out, some people had allergic reactions to this foam material, causing their faces to break out. To mitigate this problem and make cleaning your sweat up easier, you can use the rubber cover, but I find that to be much less comfortable on your face. Personally, I like the aftermarket facial interfaces from companies like VR Cover, made from PU leather. But they don't exactly come with the headset, so yeah. The facial interface of the Quest 3 is a cloth material, which at first I found to be kinda stiff and not all that comfortable compared to the Quest 2's foam interface. But as I've been using it, I feel like it's getting broken in and become more comfortable to wear. It does, however, have the same sweat absorbing problem the Quest 2 has, so I'm waiting for VR Cover's official Quest 3 interface to replace it with. The lenses on the Quest 3 are a very nice upgrade over those of the Quest 2. The Quest 2 uses Fresnel lenses, which have these concentric rings you can see, and they have a much smaller sweet spot than the pancake lenses used on the Quest 3. For those who don't know what the sweet spot is, that's the spot in the lenses you have to get your eyes to look through to get everything in focus. For anyone that has used a Quest 2, you know this sweet spot is quite small and can require a fair amount of adjusting the headset to get it just right. The sweet spot in the Quest 3's lenses is noticeably larger. It's not gigantic, and it does still require some adjusting to get it right, but it is easier to locate and much more forgiving than the Quest 2 is. When it comes to finding the sweet spot in the lenses, another aspect of that has to do with the distance between your pupils. This distance is not the same on all people, so both the Quest 2 and Quest 3 have what is called IPD adjustment to help with this. The Quest 2 has 3 preset positions you can choose from, which work well for most people. Of course, not everyone falls into one of these 3 settings, so this solution isn't perfect. You can get it to stay between 2 settings if your IPD is somewhere between 2 of them, but it can be a little tricky getting the lenses to stay between 2 settings, as they're not designed to do that. The Quest 3, on the other hand, has an IPD adjustment wheel on the underside you can adjust while wearing the headset, allowing you to set it anywhere between 58 and 70 millimeters. And yes, this distance is displayed in the headset as you adjust it. Moving on to the head strap. I am not a fan at all of the stock head strap for either the Quest 2 or the Quest 3. The stock strap for the Quest 3 is a little bit better than the stock strap for the Quest 2, as it's a little bit easier to adjust, but in all honesty, I ditched the stock head strap on my Quest 3 almost immediately after using it for the first time. There weren't any third-party straps available yet when I got my Quest 3, but within the first week after its launch, some very industrious people had already created a 3D printable adapter that allowed me to use one of my Quest 2 head straps with the Quest 3, which I did until I found a head strap I wanted to buy. Right now I'm using this one from Sakiko, I think is how it's pronounced, which I much prefer to the stock head strap. If you'd like to check it out, I'll place a link to it on Amazon in the video description. The Quest 3's controllers are smaller and slightly lighter than the Quest 2's controllers. This is due in large part to the omission of the tracking rings. The Quest 3 does have slightly stronger controller haptics, in my opinion, than the Quest 2 controllers, whose haptics often go unnoticed because of how weak they are. The battery life, however, on both the Quest 2 and Quest 3 controllers is outstanding in my opinion. Each controller uses just a single AA battery, which lasts a very, very long time. I don't know how long exactly, but by extrapolating how long I've used my Quest 3 controllers and the battery percentage used thus far, I calculate that they'll last somewhere around 40 or 50 hours, and I know the Quest 2 controllers are somewhere in that same range. Both the Quest 2 and Quest 3 support hand tracking, which allows you to navigate menus and even play some games without the need for controllers at all. When it comes to weight, the Quest 2 is actually a little bit lighter than the Quest 3, coming in at 17.7 ounces or 503 grams, while the Quest 3 weighs 18.2 ounces or 515 grams. Now, while the Quest 3 is slightly heavier, it doesn't feel like it is. In fact, it actually feels a little bit lighter, and that's because, according to Meta, the Quest 3 is 40% slimmer than the Quest 2. So with the weight of the unit closer to your face, the balance is better and therefore feels lighter. That 40% slimmer, by the way, does not include the facial interface. With the facial interfaces attached, they appear to be pretty close to the same, but once you take them off, you can see a noticeable difference. Other physical differences between the headsets are all pretty minor. They both use USB-C charging ports, but the Quest 3's has been moved to the headband here. Both have 3.5mm headphone jacks, but the one on the Quest 3 has been moved to the right side opposite the charging port. The power button on the Quest 3 has also been swapped from the right side to the left side, and the volume rocker is more or less the same on both headsets. The Quest 3 can be used with a charging dock accessory, which is what these three little contact dots are for. The Quest 2, on the other hand, does not support this kind of functionality. The last difference on the outside of the headset is one of the most obvious ones, and that is, of course, the cameras. The Quest 2 has 4 infrared cameras on the outside, which are used for tracking as well as for the pass-through, which allows you to see the real world. The Quest 3 has 6 cameras and a depth sensor. 4 of the cameras are infrared for tracking, and the other 2 are full color cameras for the pass-through. These color cameras are used in conjunction with the depth sensor, allowing you to not only see your real-world surroundings, but also get very accurate depth perception. So when you reach out and touch something in the real world, it's right where you'd expect it to be. Since we're on the subject of the pass-through, let's talk about it, because there really is no comparison. The Quest 3's pass-through is way better. On both headsets, when you want or need to see the real world, you simply double tap the side of the headset and this will activate pass-through mode. On the Quest 2, you see a pretty blurry black and white representation of the world around you. It works well enough when you need to see where you are in your play space or to get a drink or something, but if you're wanting to check your phone or do something on your PC, you can forget it. You'll need to take the headset off to be able to do those kinds of things. The Quest 3's full color pass-through, on the other hand, is a huge improvement over the Quest 2's pass-through. I don't know what the resolution of it is, but it's much sharper and clearer than that of the Quest 2. You can use your phone and even do stuff on your PC with the headset still on your face. Now, while Quest 3's pass-through does look better, it's still far from perfect. It's still kinda blurry and grainy, and there's some distortion as the headset tries stitching together camera and depth sensor data. It is because of this improved pass-through, though, that the Quest 3 is able to offer some pretty compelling mixed reality experiences. There aren't all that many mixed reality games available at the time I'm making this video, but the few I've tried are pretty cool. None of them are much more than tech demos at this point in my opinion, but they do at least help give an idea of what kind of things we can expect to see in the future. Some of these mixed reality games do work on Quest 2, like this one in Ocean Rift. It allowed me to turn my room into an aquarium, but there are others that only work with the Quest 3. Of course, the pass-through isn't the only thing that's better on the Quest 3. It also boasts a 30% increase in the pixel count on its LCD displays. The Quest 2 uses a single LCD panel with a resolution of 1832 by 1920 pixels per eye and operates between 72 and 120 Hz. The Quest 3 has dual LCD panels, so one for each eye with a resolution of 2064 by 2208 pixels per panel and also operates between 72 and 120 Hz. This means visuals on the Quest 3 are sharper and clearer due to this increase in resolution. In order to push all these extra pixels, the Quest 3 was upgraded with Qualcomm's Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 processor, which has roughly 2 times the GPU performance of the Snapdragon XR2 Gen 1 found in the Quest 2. This of course means the Quest 3 is capable of higher quality visuals, higher resolutions, and more detailed game environments. A great example of this is Red Matter 2. It was already one of the best looking games available on Quest 2, which I reviewed and you can check out on the cards right here. But the developer, Vertical Robot, updated it for the Quest 3, and it is absolutely amazing what they've done. The game looks so sharp and crisp on the Quest 3, it's hard to believe it's running on a mobile processor. It doesn't have the same level of lighting and shadow effects you find in the PC version of the game, but when it comes to the resolution and textures, it looks every bit as good as the PC version. It's mind-blowing. Both headsets have access to the exact same games library. Most all games on the Quest Store will run on both the Quest 2 and the Quest 3. So if you upgrade from the Quest 2 to the Quest 3, you can still play all your old games. So far, there aren't many Quest 3 exclusives I'm aware of, but in my opinion, it would be foolish for a developer to make an exclusive Quest 3 game at this point in time. Meta has sold something like 20 million Quest 2 headsets since it launched in 2020, and at the time I'm making this video, I'm unable to find any official sales figures for the Quest 3, but I'm certain there are nowhere near as many Quest 3s out there, so for the foreseeable future, I expect the majority of game developers to focus on making their games playable on the Quest 2, as it has a much higher install base. This simple fact makes upgrading to a Quest 3 a much less attractive proposition, as you could argue, what's the point of paying more for a Quest 3 when all the games are being made to run on the Quest 2? To counter this argument though, there are some developers who have made or are working on updates to their games to take advantage of the additional power of the Quest 3. So for those that do upgrade to the Quest 3, you'll be treated to a better version of the game. This of course assumes the game developer updates their game for the Quest 3, where if they don't, then the game will look more or less the same as it does on the Quest 2. To use either headset, you first have to set up your play area, which in the headset is known as the boundary. You do this manually on the Quest 2 by drawing out where you want your play space to be, and you can do this manually on the Quest 3 as well, but it also has an automatic boundary that scans your room to determine your play space. This room scanning is required for some mixed reality experiences, but not for any of the virtual reality games I've tried. Thanks to its increased power and resolution, the Quest 3 is a much better device, in my opinion, for media consumption than its predecessor. When I first got my Quest 2, I tried out a popular app called Big Screen, which allows you to watch movies and stuff on a giant virtual screen. And I wasn't all that impressed with it, to be honest, because I felt the resolution was too low. The image didn't look good to me because I could see the individual pixels, and I found this distracting and visually painful, for lack of a better way to describe it. Because of the Quest 3's increased resolution, apps like Big Screen look noticeably better. I can still see the pixels, but it's much less harsh on the eyes. So for me, the Quest 3 is passable for watching video content. Just to be clear, I'd still rather watch movies and TV shows on an actual TV. But when comparing the Quest 2 and Quest 3 side by side for this, I much prefer the Quest 3. While many things about the Quest 3 are superior to the Quest 2, there is one thing I found to be far worse, and that is the microphone. The overall sound quality of the microphones on both headsets is actually very similar. They're not broadcast quality or anything like that, but they sound plenty good enough in my opinion. The Quest 3, though, as you probably noticed, has a problem with plosives. When you say stuff like, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, the mic on the Quest 3 pops, whereas the mic on the Quest 2 handles them just fine. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Now, I don't think Meta is using a lower quality mic on the Quest 3. What I think is causing this is due to the positioning of the mic. On the Quest 2, there are two mics, one on each side of the bottom of the headset. The Quest 3 also has two mics on it. Well, actually it has three. There's one on the front of the headset that picks up the ambient noise in the room for noise cancellation and stuff like that. But the two that pick up your voice are located right here behind the faceplate. The sound of your voice then has to enter through this little vent here, which is also where the air enters in to cool the processor. So this directs the air from your mouth as you're speaking directly into the mics, causing them to pop. This is just a poor design decision by Meta. It takes what is actually a decent sounding microphone and turns it into poo. Being standalone devices, both the Quest 2 and Quest 3 run off a battery, which lasts around 2 hours on both devices. I do feel the Quest 2 lasts a little longer than the Quest 3 when they're new, but my Quest 2 is a couple years old now and the battery has degraded and doesn't last as long as it used to, which I've remedied by buying a head strap with a hot swappable battery pack. Unfortunately, this is the nature of lithium batteries. Over time, they degrade and don't hold a charge as long as they did when they were new. So no matter which headset you choose to go with, at some point you're going to want to buy some kind of solution to extend your battery life. As for charging the batteries, it takes about as long to charge them as they last. So for a new headset, charging takes around 2 hours once the battery has been fully depleted. At the beginning of the video, I said that both the Quest 2 and Quest 3 can be used for PC VR, and that we'd talk about that later. Well, it's later! To use either headset with a PC, there are two ways to go about it. The first is to use what is called Quest Link. This requires the use of a USB-C cable connected to your headset and to your PC. The other way, which is my preferred method, is wirelessly via AirLink. This requires you to connect your PC to your Wi-Fi router with a network cable. And then you can wirelessly stream your PC VR games to your headset. There are other apps you can use for this as well, like Virtual Desktop and Steam Link, but using a Quest headset for PC VR is a video all its own, so I'm not going to go into any more detail than that here. As for how each headset looks when using them for PC VR, the resolution is noticeably better on the Quest 3 over the Quest 2 at the same render resolution and game settings. Having said that, the Quest 2 does look really good if you have a powerful enough PC. Way better than any standalone Quest 2 games look, mind you. But due to its higher resolution displays, the Quest 3 looks noticeably sharper and clearer when comparing it side by side with the Quest 2. I know this has been a long video, but I thank you for sticking around until now. We've gone over a lot of stuff, and I hope it's helped you get a good idea of the differences between these two headsets. So back to our question at the beginning of the video. Is it worth paying double the money for the Quest 3 over the Quest 2? Well, I'm sure you know by now the answer is it depends. For someone like me who wants the best standalone headset available today, then the answer is obviously yes. For someone who already has a Quest 2 and is looking to possibly up their game, then it's going to depend on whether or not you feel the upgrades to the Quest 3 over the Quest 2 are worth the additional cost to you or not. And for someone on a budget or someone simply looking to get into VR for the first time, then the Quest 2 is a great choice, as it provides a very good VR experience at an affordable price. Subscribe.